Hello there, listeners, and welcome to the first, I guess we'll call it the first, Jake and Chuck Talk Bucks, Hardcore Bucks Fan podcast. This is something that we're going to be doing hopefully on a semi-regular schedule now. I do want to kind of just make a mission statement, if you will, about the direction of this podcast. This is a podcast that's going to be for Bucks fans. We're going to have lots and lots of guests on the show. But this is going to be an open conversation. I don't want it to be too argumentative, and I think Chuck agrees with me on that. This is going to be censor-free. There's no agendas here. They're going to be open to differing opinions, and more so than open to it, I'm going to welcome that because, me personally, if somebody disagrees with me, I'd love the opportunity to talk to them and maybe get a little bit of education about that. But we're going to present all sides. And one thing we will for sure not have is a mob mentality against people that disagree with our principles, our ideas, our opinions. Again, a little bit talking about censorship. I think it's a problem with American culture right now, particularly our media. But if you come on our show, we want you to say what you want. And I'm just going to say it right now. Fuck censorship. Even if your opinion pisses me off, you don't have to worry about being banned from being on this show. With that being said, Chuck, how would you like to introduce our first guest today?
I think for anyone who's listening on Real GM, I would say he's the artist formerly known as News, also known as Luke. He's a friend of Jake and ours. We've known him for, I don't know, I've probably known him 6 years. I don't remember exactly how long, and I don't know if Jake knew him before that, I think, but I'm not sure. But yeah, our first guest today will be Luke.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, and touching on that, again, we both have a personal relationship with Luke. I know we've butted heads on some certain things, but I've always had respect for you, and I'll never punish anybody, especially a friend, for having an opinion, even if it's one that I'm passionate about and outspoken about. And one thing I do want to keep in mind as we get this thing kicked off is we don't take ourselves too seriously here. Remember, we're all fans. That's why we're doing this. And if you're listening, you're probably just as hardcore of a fan, if not more so. So with that being said, Luke, very happy to have you on the show.
Well, thanks a lot, and I really appreciate you guys saying that and having me here. And I hope everybody listening enjoys what we have to say.
And I hope any type of community that I take part in, I don't get banned from any communities. But we'll move on from that. Having said that, let's talk about this arena deal now. It passed the Senate with a vote of 21-10, which was a little bit higher than we thought. So I guess the next question would be, what's next? And I kind of want to ask you guys, going into that vote, personally, I had a thought process of I was a little bit scared maybe the Bucks were going to end up leaving. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it was close to 8 or 9, just thinking that we didn't have these votes. Now, what do you think your kind of threat level is? But also, how do you think this is going to vote as far as the House vote that's coming up? I believe, is it the 28th?
Yeah, 28th. That'd be this upcoming Tuesday, I believe. Don't have a calendar in front of me. And so my personal thought going into and I've told a lot of people this from the start, I never had any doubt that this would get done. And that's coming from anyone who knows me politically, because you can't talk about the arena without getting into politics. I just don't support public financing of anything. One person on Real GM asked me why I wasn't outspoken against, Target and Pick and Save getting subsidies. And I said, well, show me a forum where we debate our favorite convenience stores and grocery stores, and I'll go protest that. But I kept telling a lot of people, both those who support it and who were kind of questionable on public support, I thought from the start there's no way this wasn't going to get done, just because the amount of money the owners, Herb Cole, the amount of money they had committed from the private sector was almost unprecedented. It's not completely, because you have places like San Francisco where you get in a fully private financed arena, but for Wisconsin sports, that's an unprecedented level to pay for half of it. So I just thought, as messed up as Wisconsin and particularly Milwaukee politics can be at times, I had faith that they couldn't screw this one up, even though, like I said, I personally don't support any public financing, and that's something I don't. I don't support Northwestern Mutual getting it. I don't support the Bucks. It's not that I'm not a Bucks fan. It's just that's where I stand philosophically. So as far as the assembly, I think I think they'll get it. I think it's actually going to be closer than the Senate just because you have more people in the outskirts that aren't necessarily all that invested in the Bucks because, let's be honest, what does some random assemblyman or woman out in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, give a crap about the Bucks? They don't. It's not their problem. They don't benefit all that much from it. Maybe a couple of their constituents are Bucks fans, but the vast majority of them probably don't care. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the team was not marketed to the state under the previous regime, which they are starting to do better. So maybe down the road, those people will care.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I know you said it's a thing you're against public financing. And, Luke, I know that you are too. And it's kind of a touchy subject for a lot of Bucks fans. And I know that you two especially have been scrutinized by fellow Bucks fans for it. I kind of want to give you an opportunity to really explain your thought process. And I know, Luke, you told me it's more of an ideological thing with you.
Right. So I think where Chuck and I come from, at least, maybe I can speak for Chuck. He can correct me if I'm wrong. But we understand that not everything that we want, I guess you have to say politically in this situation, is always going to come to fruition, especially with the way that modern politics are, especially in Wisconsin. But when I try to talk about this, I try to say that I'm not anti-arena. I'm anti-public financing, and that's something that I've always wanted to get across because I am a big Bucks fan. I do hope an arena gets built, and there are certain forms of public financing that I would have been okay with, just like in the new proposal that they came up with. They have a ticket surcharge. I know that Chuck actually did the math on it when we first brought up the arena, and I forgot what the exact figures were that he found out, but if we did a percentage-based ticket surcharge, I would have been more than fine with that. I think that would have been a great way to pay for the arena because people who are using the arena would have paid more for it at that point and paid for the entire thing.
Yeah, and Luke brought that up. It was shortly after the team was sold and exchanged hands, and the owners started talking about wanting to have shovels in the ground. I think by this fall is when that was the original target date.
Yes.
And we're still potentially on target for that. I don't know if we're going to quite make it, but it seems we're going to be close. So I crunched the numbers. I went in. The Bradley Center every year has to put out a report. It says total number of ticket sales and everything like that. And I went through and I calculated. I forget the exact number, but I believe it was 2013 at the time was the latest report, or 2012. It was right around 750,000 tickets total sold. And then I crunched the numbers because you can look at the ticket surcharge or the total ticket sales. So I figured out the average price, and I believe I said 10% ticket surcharge. So people are sitting courtside, they have their $400, $500 tickets, whatever they cost. They're going to pay the $40, $50. The family of six that doesn't have as much disposable income, they're paying, they got the $15 tickets. They get hit for a little ticket surcharge, but not much. And that would have covered it with the $250 million we've already got. And I only went up, I think, another $200 million because we were at the time talking $400 to $450. And now the price tag has jumped to $500 million. But easily, right around a 10% ticket surcharge, and you don't have to ask a penny from anyone else. So that was always my preferred plan because, like Luke said, I'm pro-arena. I want the Bucks to stay here. Many people don't. Some people know, but not a lot of people know that. When I was 4 years old, I moved out to Olympia, Washington, which is an hour south of Seattle. So in addition to being a Bucks fan, I grew up out there. I got my Packers, Bucks, Brewers from my dad, but I grew up in the Seattle area. So I was not only a diehard Bucks fan, a diehard Sonics fan. I've been through what it is to lose a team. I know. But that doesn't mean I can bend on my personal convictions. So I'm willing to put in money for the arena. I've said this all along. I'm willing to put in a lot of money for the arena via ticket surcharge. If they want to throw around an offering basket like we're at a church at every game next year, I don't care. I'll put in the money. What I personally cannot bring myself to do is say that my neighbor, actually quite literally my neighbor next door, she's 80-some years old. I don't know exactly how old she is. I've never asked her because that'd be a rude question.
Grandma Ethel.
But I don't want her to have to pay for it. She doesn't use it. She doesn't go down there for Disney on Ice. She doesn't go down there for monster trucks or concerts or Bucks games. That's just not her thing. I know what she does. She's out here gardening. She likes to go golfing. And she doesn't go down to the Bradley Center, ever. So, my philosophy has always been I'm willing to pay for it. I'm not willing to tell others who won't use it that they have to also pay for it. And that's kind of where I come from politically. It's just the whole idea that why? I don't want to pay for – she golfs. I don't want to pay for her golf courses. I don't golf. I don't want her to have to pay for my Bradley Center, or
Sure.
well, the new Bradley Center. So
I'm glad you guys brought it up. I think there's a lot more people that think the way that you guys are thinking, and I respect your guys' opinion. I want to make this or put this point across. I know you guys as two of the most hardcore Bucks fans that I know of all my friends and that. So I understand your point of view. I think we all kind of share this feeling that maybe morally, ethically, ideologically, you disagree with it, but realistically, this is how business is done, particularly in places like Milwaukee, Sacramento, smaller markets, and that. I do want to bring up comparing this deal to, say, Miller Park, which was 100% publicly financed, which we're still actually paying for it, I believe. Is that through 2000?
They keep extending that tax. There's as anyone who knows me politically knows I'm a libertarian. I'll just say that. I'm not when I'm going to come out and say I'm small government, people are going to think Republican. I'm not. I despise Republicans and Democrats equally. They're all garbage in my mind. But that's neither here nor there. When taxes exist, they pretty much never go away. It's very hard to get rid of a tax. I don't know that the Miller Park tax is ever going to go away. It was supposed to have already expired by now, but they've extended it, I think, twice. I'm not sure. I'd imagine it'll keep getting expanded.
Let me ask you this. Knowing that that tax continues to be extended and it appears for the foreseeable future that it might continue to be, do you think Miller Park was a mistake, even though it was 100% public money? Do you think it has done more benefit for this community, or do you think it's doing harm to this community?
Well, I'm not going to say that it harms the community necessarily. I think it is good to have public sports teams, especially in a place like Milwaukee or any bigger city. I think that the Miller Park has actually spawned some growth around it. But if you look down there, there's not a ton of growth around it. What I will say is that Miller Park was built at an excellent time for the team. And the Bucks are very similar to the Brewers in that aspect. The Brewers had just started drafting some good players, Ryan Braun, Ricky Weeks, Prince Fielder, and stuff like that. So when the arena first got built, it wasn't that, it was successful because it was new, and then it dipped a little bit. And then once those players started to come through, it got very popular. And yeah, I think it was a big, boon to the community to have everybody be able to go down there. I guess in terms of if I think it's a mistake or not, like Chuck said, ideologically, I still wouldn't support it, mainly because I think that the MLB could have built that stadium and profited heavily off of it, just as the Brewers could have profited heavily off of it, just like the Bucks could. That being said, I don't think it's a great deal for the state because they have to continue to pay costs. Something that Jake and I talked about earlier, actually, was how the Bucks aren't going to be on the hook for those costs. So I think that the Bucks stadium deal is significantly better than the Miller Park deal for the state because they're not on the hook for any future costs. So in relation to most stadium deals, I think that this is a great deal from that standpoint. It's not something that I would approve, but I think it's a great deal compared to most other stadiums, especially ones where they have to pay long-term fees and finances.
It is certainly the lesser of evils when you look at this plan because the state, the amount they contribute to the construction is capped. If there's overages, if this thing costs $600 million, the Bucks have to come up with that extra $100 million somehow. That's great.
There's a lot of protections built into it.
Exactly.
And that's good. And like Luke said, I'm glad they added the ticket surcharge in there because that means, and I think every Bucks fan should support a ticket surcharge, even if it's not the whole thing, which is what my preferred method was. But it means that you as the fans have some skin in the game. You go to the game, you are helping build that arena rather than just the entire community's building it. It doesn't matter if you go to the game. If you want to support that thing, get out there, put butts in the seat, and you're helping pay your part. Because I think all of us, the three of us here, plus anyone listening, we're all hardcore Bucks fans. We all want to do our part. I know some of the real GM posters. They're from Australia. They became Bucks fans because of Bogut. We've got some from all over the world. I don't even remember all the locations we've got.
And hello to all our Aussie listeners.
Yeah, the Australians.
Good day, mate.
The Australians had the biggest presence, but I know we've got a few others in Central and Eastern Europe, and wherever. I'm sure we've got some from Cameroon for Bamute or Turkey for Ursa. We've had such international players.
There was a big Dan Gadzarich mark on the board for a while, I believe.
Is true.
So,
and a Zaza Pachulia mark too.
When we did the Save Our Bucks billboard, people from all over the world donated to that. So I know we have the support, and that's just where I stand. This deal is certainly better than the Miller Park deal. And I won't outright say the Miller Park deal is a mistake, but the state's going to be paying for that a long time. And I don't think there's necessarily, people will try to, and they've tried to sell the Bucks Arena as a financial benefit. And I think certainly over keeping and maintaining the Bradley Center, it's a better financial situation. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a good financial situation. And I certainly don't think the Miller Park is a good financial situation for the state. We're going to be paying for that thing for many years to come.
And I think it's okay to say that, sure, it's not a financial benefit, but maybe there is a benefit that you can't really quantify in that it builds community. It's going to hopefully spur an entirely new downtown development, and we can kind of grow from there.
It certainly does, and I've said to people, I said that is the angle you should be taking on selling this thing. Too many people tried to sell it as a financial benefit. There was a meme going around, I don't even remember who started, but it said, Bucks Arena cost $1.28 per taxpayer. And then someone said they generate $1.13 per taxpayer. Well, it's a 15-cent loss. What the meme didn't say is that it's $1.28 per year. People were trying to say that it was $1.28 one-time cost. Well, that's just not true. The population of Wisconsin is only 5.7 million, I believe. So if we were all paying $1.28, we'd be getting the stadium for like $7.5 million. That'd be a heck of a deal that I could get behind. But that's just not the reality of it. But yes.
We need to do like a video podcast and have Chuck with the big chalkboard, like doing the equations on it. Like,
hey, I'm
Chuck's
a numbers
theory
guy.
of relativity.
I'm a numbers guy. I got a degree in computer programming. It's not what I do, but I've taken some advanced math courses in my life, and I definitely, that's one of the things I do. I like breaking down numbers. But certainly this is not the worst deal. And like you said, there is some value, the community value of having people bond over a team, having businesses down there. And if all this additional $500 million in private development, we get a mall and maybe some condos,
and
some office space. Yeah, exactly. It certainly has potential. I'll believe it when I see it, because, a lot of times we aim for the moon and, maybe we'll get up there, maybe we'll get less, maybe we'll get more. Maybe, 10 years from now it's going to explode, and Milwaukee will be one of the new hot destinations to move to. I don't know. It's certainly a gamble, but I'm glad there's protections in place on the deal as it's proposed. It's going to be interesting to see if the Assembly wants to change anything, because, they'll have their say in it. And when it's all said and done, I think it gets done. I've said that from the start. I had a couple, not only you, but I had a couple other friends who were quite negative on it. People on Real GM know Stager. He was pretty down on this. He thought they were leaving. I've got a friend who doesn't post. He's actually a coworker. He does, well, kind of a coworker.
Well, and that's how politics are done. You kind of get lost in the moment, and everybody's going to hold out till that last minute to try to broker a better deal. So again, the negativity, I guess, was understood to a point. But you're right. In the long run, there was just too much money on the table to just go away.
Yeah, I think, if we were talking the owners and Herb Kohl were putting in a combined $100 million, I don't know if this gets done.
Sure.
But because they were offering up half of it before any state proposal was ever made in the first place, that was a pretty good faith effort.
I believe that was day one from when they announced
that was
the deal
part
of
of
ownership.
Part of the sale, yes.
Tremendous PR on their part.
It was part of the sale, and I have to, as much as we like to rag on Herb Kohl, because his tenure as an owner was pretty terrible.
Me rag on Herb Kohl? What are you talking about? I would never do such a thing.
Yeah. That is all him. Whether Lasry and Edens wanted to put in money for the arena, I don't know if they wanted to or not. Maybe from the start they offered more for the team, and Herb Kohl said, you know what, let's do this as a PR thing together. You give me less money for the team, throw in money for the arena. That would be my guess. They really were willing to pay $700 million or whatever for the arena, but he said, hey, let's do it this way. We'll get this arena done. Herb Kohl is, as much as he's, I don't agree with him politically on a lot of stuff, he's not a stupid politician. And I think this whole $250 million donation has his fingerprints all over it, as much as I like to hate on his tenure as an owner.
To add to that, I think that, Chuck, what you said is absolutely true, but I think people really do understate the $100 million that Herb Kohl is giving. He doesn't have to do that. That's more impressive than, the new owner is even ponying up money because he no longer has a stake in this. He's just doing it to keep the team in Wisconsin. I don't know how you guys feel about that, and that's not to diminish what the new owners are doing, but Herb Cole doing that is very impressive. It shows that he truly is a Bucks fan. He truly does love the city of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin.
Well, we're going to move on from the arena issue and all the doom and gloom and arguing and pissing and moaning. But before we do, this is crunch time now, since we have everybody's views now. Want to ask the question, would you prefer this deal happening despite your ideological views or the Bucks leaving Wisconsin, if those are your two options?
I would still have the Bucks leave Wisconsin, and I say that very sadly.
Luke, you're banned. Get off the podcast. You too, Chuck. This is my podcast now. You're all banned.
I do love the Bucks. I do hope that they stay here, and I am fully aware that if we let the Bucks leave, that another state will probably pick them up, and the same thing will likely keep happening over and over. But I'm personally just the opinion of that. If you just keep doing the same thing over and over, nothing will ever change. And I am willing to be the person who puts my foot down and takes a stand. Obviously, a lot of other people aren't, which is why I completely agree with Chuck. I think the arena is getting done. I think the Bucks are staying here no matter what. So I don't think it's something that Bucks fans or even myself have to worry about. I'm going to be happy when the team stays here, even though it's something that I don't agree with politically. But I would prefer that the team would leave with this deal.
Chuck, same question.
It's the same answer for me, and it's not like I said. I was.
You go to hell.
Yeah.
Go to hell and you die.
I was a huge Sonics fan. I've been through it before. It hurts, but I'm too principled in my ideology, and maybe that makes me flawed. I'm not a politician, so it doesn't matter. I don't have one of those 99 votes in the state assembly. I don't have one of the 33 votes in the state senate. I'm just one voter. But if it came down to me, it's just I'm not the idea to me is the idea that I'm not willing to force other people to pay for things that I want. I'm willing to contribute much more than what they're asking me to, in order to prevent people from having to pay it against their will. And, people will argue, oh, this brings jobs, this brings entertainment, whatever. You could argue that about a lot of different things. You could argue that about every business out there. If they all threatened to leave unless we built them a new stadium, we'd have no money. We're just robbing the taxpayers. And, that's just where I stand. So, and I have to take a harder stance when it is something that I want and I benefit from. I don't care if they build a new ice skating rink. I don't ice skate, but I'd be against that as well. So when it's something I do want, I would look hypocritical and selfish if I just flipped my stance on it at that point. So
that's understandable.
I'm good with. I'm coming to terms that it's going to happen, and I've thought that all along. I've never.
So it's not keeping you up at night.
No, it's
not giving you nightmares.
And I have, it is what it is. That's the way the world works with politics, and I know that, and I've known that from the start, and I expected it to be done. I'm glad that they put in the caps. Those are important things to me, that at least we're protected to a certain extent from a ton of overages.
All right. Well,
how about you, Jake?
Yeah. We know where you stand.
I think I'm a little bit closer to you guys than you think, but I mean, I guess at the core of me, with this, again, I believe in a perfect world, yes, we would not be giving public money for what people would consider a private enterprise and for other people to profit off of it. But again, I'm realistic about the way business is done nowadays, so I'm, ecstatic about the deal and that we got such a great deal. I do want to move on and talk a little draft, but I gotta be honest, that was kind of disappointing. I was hoping for like some Fox News, we're shouting at each other and cursing at each other.
One thing I will say about what you said to the appeal to emotion, I do think that is a great argument for Pro Arena, because just us three here, without the Bucks, we wouldn't be friends. We wouldn't be sitting here making this podcast. So I think that's a great argument.
Three original Squad 6 members.
Yeah, not only are we here talking about the Bucks, we wouldn't be here talking about this. We wouldn't know each other, period. We know each other because of the Milwaukee Bucks. So, it's not something I take lightly. It's just a matter of, where I have to stand in the world. And like you said, I know this is how it works. I was not going to be one of those people out there picketing or anything like that. That's not me. But when discussing it amongst friends and other Bucks fans, whether that's on a forum, on Facebook, in person, I'm going to have to know why I oppose it. That's just it.
Well, you're banned. You're banned. You're both banned. That's it. Done. Out of here. Ban city, bitch.
Considering we're recording this on my computer,
Well, whatever.
You're banned. You're banned.
All right.
Okay.
Well, all right. Let's talk a little draft. All right. So the Bucks had the 17th pick in this last draft, and it was a pretty busy draft night for them. So everybody knows by now they drafted Rashad Vaughn, the 6'5" shooting guard out of UNLV. Me watching this, like always, it seems that I always have a number of guys that'd be like, okay, yeah, this would be a good pick, or I'd be excited about this number of guys. And it seems like every year, being a Bucks fan, if there's 8 guys, we'll have the 9th pick, or if there's 15 guys, every single one of those guys goes right before us, and then we're kind of just left with whatever was left over. And it seemed like that this year. Looking at what happened, though, I initially thought Bobby Portis was the guy who I wasn't huge on, but I thought he fit a need for us, which was a big man that could shoot, stretch the floor. He put up great numbers at Arkansas, and I did have some questions about how he would translate to the NBA. Looking at it now, in hindsight, that's who I probably would have taken, or Sam Decker, especially now that we know that Jared Dudley's not going to be our kind of 3-4 forward combo. What did you guys think about the draft personally, Luke?
I don't mind the pick. He certainly wasn't the guy that I wanted going in. I was now knowing that Decker actually slipped to us, Decker would have been the guy that I picked. I actually really like Decker coming out, and I'm a Marquette fan, not a Wisconsin fan. So that's
Homer,
really,
liar, banned.
Yeah, that's not really why I'm a huge fan of Sam Decker. I think he's going to be versatile defensively. I think he's probably going to be able to guard 2 or 3 positions. He's got the length that kind of fits into Jason Kidd's defensive system. As you've seen, he really likes the guys at the forward spot that are long and can defend multiple spots and make it troublesome to make a lot of passes around the court and stuff like that. Offensively, I really like how Decker seemed to fit into the offense in Wisconsin and move without the ball. The one thing I would say about him as a prospect, though, is if he doesn't develop a jump shot, I don't think he's going to be a very good player. But I'd be willing to take a gamble on that. Because even late in the tournament last year, he did hit a lot of jump shots. The guy that I'm with you, the guy that I thought was going to be there that we were going to take was Bobby Portis. Just like you said, he fit a lot of what we need. We needed somebody who could stretch the floor as a big and stuff like that, which may or may not be one of the problems with Greg Monroe now. But he can really stretch the floor. He should have theoretically fit with Jabari and Giannis in the front court and stuff like that. Vaughn, he's got youth on his side, and he's got a jumper. He's got a pretty smooth handle and stuff like that. I kind of project him to be more of a bench guard, a guy who is going to be able to come off and put up points in bunches at times, but probably never really a star. I do like that he can shoot, though, because just about any pro prospect who can shoot can be useful.
Yeah, as the draft unfolded, I was unfortunately working, so I couldn't watch it live, but I was following it on, luckily I have Sirius Radio, so they were carrying every pick live, and I didn't have to listen to 1250, no offense to them. At times, they can be unbearable. And I say that as someone who's met a lot of the guys over there and think they're pretty nice guys, but they don't always know what they're talking about. Shots fired. Anyway, so I was driving around.
I'm not saying anything to that.
Driving around, listening to Sirius XM, where they had live national draft coverage every pick, a little analysis. And as it was unfolding, I thought Portis was going to be the guy, just because it seemed the most obvious fit. That being said, I know, Jake, you follow the prospects. I watch a lot of college basketball, but I don't really get into the whole measurements and following the draft like I do in the NFL. I really follow the NFL draft. For anyone who knows, Jake and I in real life, we get together every year, watch the NFL draft, have our own mock draft. We take it pretty seriously. I don't do that with the NBA draft. So when it comes to the NBA draft, I kind of usually let the professionals do their thing because I just don't know. And Hammond, as much as I have issues with some of the things that have happened over his tenure, his drafting track record has been pretty good. We got Giannis, if we redrafted Giannis, would probably go number 1 overall. He wouldn't be there for us at 15. And you can say, oh, it was a no-brainer, but someone had to take that risk, and 14 teams didn't before we did. We did pretty good with Larry Sanders. We did, even though he turned into a head case. But, his draft record is pretty solid, so at some point I have to trust the professionals. He's not at Ted Thompson level for me, who he makes a pick, I just assume the guy's probably going to make a Pro Bowl, end up in the Hall of Fame.
Calm
down. Hey, the metrics don't lie.
Go to a different podcast with that.
But I do, I take a lot of issues with John Hammond and some of his trades and some of the free agent signings we've made in the past. His drafting I don't have as much issue with, especially factoring in where we are drafting every year. My hope would have been I would have preferred to have a top 5 pick this year. Unfortunately, the team was better than we expected, and we didn't end up in that position. I mean, I don't like saying unfortunately we were good, but it would have been nice to have another top 5 pick to pair with Giannis and Jabari. But picking where we were, I can understand, and I'm not too bent out of shape over it.
I need somebody to convince me on Rashad Vaughn. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about his upside, but other than the fact that he was the youngest player in the draft, I believe. Okay, I mean, I guess if you want to say that because he's young, there's more upside, sure. But I look at his injury history. His measurables are just pretty average for a shooting guard. And a lot of people could say those stats that he put up at UNLV, which were great for a freshman. I believe he put up something like 17 points a game.
His efficiency kept going up, too.
Sure. But I do think he was in a system that was, going to play to his strengths and put up those bigger numbers. Long term, this has been a comparison that's been thrown out there, is maybe like an O.J. Mayo type player. I know you can't expect the world at that point in the draft, but I really thought with Decker and Portis available, they were 2 smarter picks. And with Decker, just the local ties was just icing on the cake. I think it would have helped garner some more, just a little bit, but a little bit more public support for the team. But again, I'm really kind of on the fence about Rashad Vaughn, and it's probably going to be that way for a while because I don't think he's going to see a lot of the floor this year, barring any major trades that happen.
Well, what do you think about the theories? Like, we've heard the Jason Kidd agent theory, right? So he took it because of the agent. And what do you think about the theory that now that the Bucks are ready to win now, they said going into the draft they were going to look for a shooter or a big man. How do you feel about, did they reach for somebody that they felt filled the need?
Well, it's kind of funny because Chuck was talking about John Hammond's abilities as a drafter. There was a story that kind of leaked out that supposedly Hammond and just about every, I think, scout that they had were on board with Bobby Portis, and Jason Kidd kind of overruled that, and that was his pick. That is very scary territory for me. There's plenty of guys that have tried to do the coach GM role, whether they have the official title or not, and usually they fall flat on their face. Now, on the court, so far we've seen nothing but great things from Jason Kidd as a coach. The idea, though, of him making the final calls on the roster, and a lot of people could argue that many of the moves he's made so far has been in to bring in people he's close with, or his buddies, so to speak. That's kind of a scary situation to me. We can look no further than in the same night they make the trade for Grievous Vasquez, or General Grievous. And again, I understand Kidd has a type of player that he likes, but sometimes you just need to focus on one thing, and if you try to do both, it's going to end up, screwing you over in the long run.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of anyone who takes on the coach and GM role. Probably when I first got turned off to it, because back to the whole being a Seattle sports fan, Mike Holmgren obviously left the Packers to go to Seattle. Coach, GM, it didn't work. He was a great coach and GM, or a great coach in Green Bay, did not work. And more
Mike
often,
Sherman,
more often
Mike
than
Dunleavy,
not,
maybe it's just Mike's that can't do it.
maybe Jason's good. We don't know. Has there been a Jason that's been a GM and a
Okay.
coach? But anyways, the track record for anyone who's a GM and a coach, it's too much on your plate. You even see it with the Packers this year. Mike McCarthy said he had too much on his plate. He gave up play calling. He wants to be more involved in the team. And that's not even being GM. He has a GM doing all the personnel decisions. And I'm sure Ted Thompson asked Mike McCarthy for a little input on the players. But he's not playing 2 roles. And you're right that it is scary, and it's obviously comparing apples to oranges because you have 53 people plus a practice squad versus the 12-man NBA roster, well, 15. So you're obviously handling a lot more personnel on the NFL side of things versus the NBA, but it just doesn't have a history of working. I don't know. I'm sure there's someone who's done it successfully. I can't think of them off the top of my head necessarily.
Pat Riley's one that.
Yeah, that's true. But even then, he handed off coaching to Spoelstra.
There's a lot of speculation that Popovich basically does both in San Antonio, but they have another guy up there kind of who has the title, but.
Right.
People say that Popovich does all.
And I'm sure Popovich has been there long enough. He's got the respect. I'm sure he has a fair amount of weight. But even if the other guy is just doing a whole lot of scouting for him or whatever it is, and maybe that's all Jason Kidd had. Who knows? We don't really know the power structure there, but Jake's right that it is a scary proposition to think that, does he have too much on his plate? Is he... who's pulling the strings over there? Because if all the scouts and John Hammond wanted Bobby Portis and then Jason Kidd gets to overrule that, I don't know that I like that because the scouts, they're the ones that should have a lot of the say. They're the ones who do the bulk of the work. They're out there watching college games night after night on the road. It's probably a fun job, but also a very stressful and tenuous job being away from your family. And I think, if you have to have a guy in charge who trusts their scouts and not pulling for whatever reason it is. And maybe it's going to turn out right. This is something we have to watch over the next 2 to 3 years.
It's highly speculated that with the Michael Carter-Williams trade, Jason Kidd said, this is the guy I want, go out and get him. There's been some speculation that with this Grievous-Vasquez trade, he wanted Grievous-Vasquez. He tells them, go out and get him. We saw the Bucks gave up a protected first-round pick that they acquired from the Clippers in 2017, their second-round pick as well on this past draft. To me, that's one of the other things that scares me is that maybe Jason Kidd doesn't value these things like these draft picks and a slow rebuild. And it could be, it reminds me of Mike Sherman, our old Packers coach GM, that he just sees his guys and he'll get them at whatever cost it takes. You compare the Vasquez trade to, we just traded Jared Dudley and Zaza Pachulia basically for nothing. And I think if you take those three players, they're probably valued similarly around the league. Yet we're giving up picks to acquire Vasquez and taking up a chunk of our cap space to do it, whereas other teams were just giving our similarly valued players for free. It just seems to me like we kind of got hosed in that whole deal.
Yeah, the one that surprised me the most was Zaza being given away for free, right? Because Zaza isn't a great player, but he's a reasonable backup big man. I think we can all agree on that. He's far from just some total scrub.
And we've all heard that he's this great veteran presence.
Right. So to give him away for free and then to give up 2 picks for Vasquez is pretty odd. Jared Dudley, I know he has the injury. I don't know if that was, maybe the teams knew about that beforehand and that's why we just got rid of him. Plus, it's being said that it was a favor to him and stuff like that. So it is a little bit odd that we just gave away Zaza and then gave up more for Vasquez. I personally think, I wouldn't say it's a panic trade, but I think it is a fit trade or a trade that you would call for insurance.
The timing seemed weird to me.
Right. So Michael Carter-Williams, right, his biggest flaw is that he can't shoot the basketball right now. And, I think we're going to get into a little bit later when we talk about Greg Monroe about how spacing could be an issue. Vasquez can shoot the ball. So if you have 4 guys in the starting lineup who can shoot the basketball, they need a veteran in there who can space the floor if he has to start in an emergency situation if the season starts to go down the tube. So I think that's why they did it. I think that's why they probably gave up a little bit more for him. And I will say you have to kind of, if you mess up the second pick, if you mess up the Jabari Parker pick, that's a lot more hurtful to your team and your organization than if you mess up an acquisition like Grievous-Vasquez. Not saying that those don't matter. I don't agree with the transaction either, but I think you also have to take that into account too. So.
Well, and it's not all negatives. If we talk about Kidd, let's talk about Greg Monroe for a second. Here's a guy who's the most high-profile free agent signing we've seen from the Bucks really ever. Again, people saying Jason Kidd's fingerprints are all over this one. It was him and a big recruiting pitch from Chris Middleton. So thank you for that, Chris. That's a positive to change the mindset of what Milwaukee can be, of what the Bucks organization can be, to not be a laughingstock, but be a place where maybe we're building a championship core. Come here, and for Monroe to pick the Bucks over the Knicks and Lakers, who later claimed that they didn't offer a max deal, which is bullshit because the multiple, that was just like, oh, you spurned me. No, I didn't even care.
They're trying to save face, it's like a bad breakup with a girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it is. He said, she said, they offered him the max. He chose Milwaukee, and they feel spurned.
Does Greg Monroe come here if Jason Kidd's not the coach?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, there's not a chance in the world. If Larry Drew is still our head coach, no. One, we probably have a top 5 pick again, which would be a benefit in and of its own right. But we do not get Greg Monroe, nor any free agents down the road. That was.
But we do have better animated GIFs to look at.
That is true. It's.
You didn't like the Larry Drew era, calling a timeout 13 seconds into the game.
Got us Jabari Parker. Skills.
Thanks, Larry. Big ups.
Yeah. It says a lot about the culture. We make a lot of jokes and people say tongue-in-cheek about culture change and culture shifts, whether they're talking about in the locker room or how the team is perceived.
Sure, this is legit.
But this is legit. We have a free agent who had, from all reports, max offers from Milwaukee, New York, Los Angeles, and Sacramento was the fourth team. Portland. There you go. Arguably, as recent as 1 year ago, all 3 of those teams were better destinations than Milwaukee. Go back 5 years, whatever, the last 25 years, go all the way back to the 70s before, that's when Milwaukee would have been a desirable destination. For the last 30, 40 years, Milwaukee's not been a desirable destination. And now all of a sudden, we potentially are. And, it's from that aspect, can I handle a little meddling with Kidd if he gets us the big splash free agents and we put together something special? It's the potential's there.
Well, and talking about Monroe, I've been accused of being a Bucks hater for being a little bit skeptical on the whole thing. But they cost a lot of money, which we knew, some people said it's you have to pay Milwaukee premium to get people to come here. I don't buy that. It was the same money being offered everywhere. But on the court, I'm a little bit skeptical about the fit. Luke, you mentioned it earlier. Spacing is so huge in the NBA right now. Look at the champs. They have guys that can shoot. 4 of their starting 5 are just tremendous three-point shooters.
Well, there was the statistic that I believe the top 4 teams left in the playoffs were 4 of the top 5 shooting teams in the NBA, three-point shooting teams, and the Clippers were the other team in the top 5. So,
well, and Monroe, what he kind of reminds me of is a supercharged version of Zaza, which I'm not knocking him by saying that because Zaza was a good rotational player for us this year. Monroe is an even better passer than Zaza is. He's a more natural rebounder, much better athlete. But I think similar in that they kind of have limited range. I think you're not really going to see him shooting many jumpers longer than maybe 8-10-foot jumpers around the hoop. And neither of them are great defenders. Now, there's the Jason Kidd effect that people talk about, just his defensive system, that he made Zaza a good, maybe not good, but a passable defender. There is a lot more potential for Monroe to still develop into a decent defender. But I look at what the Bucks needed this offseason, and I think it was, like you said, spacing. So a shooting big man that could defend was probably ideal. Again, that's a perfect world. That's tough to find that player. But I think by signing Monroe, we got neither of those needs, which, as I said, shooting and defense down low.
I mean, shooting big men are really hard to find to begin with. I mean, unless you've got...
Are they, though, in today's NBA?
I mean, if they're shooting big men that are also really good defenders. I mean,
Sure.
the whole package. For a while there, Ersan was a good shooter, but he was never all that defensively. He'd take a charge now and then, get a couple blocks. He wasn't
an effort guy.
He wasn't a turnstile defensively, but he wasn't a stud defender. Not everyone. Tim Duncan he's one of the best players of all time. But when I think of really good defensive shooting big men, obviously that's comparing one of the probably top 5 players of all time, and that's a really high bar to hold people to. For me, I agree with you, and I see where you're coming from in terms of it's overpaying, and are we at the point where that's the missing piece that's going to put us over the hump? I don't know. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. For me, the future has always been how do Giannis and Jabari develop, and it still is. Whether we have Greg Monroe, whether we had a draft pick, Portis, or whoever we had. It doesn't
Larry
matter.
Sanders.
Yeah, exactly. Unless Jabari and Giannis turn, one of them has to be an all-star, preferably both of them to be all-stars. That'd be fantastic. But at least one of them has to be an all-star. They have to be right around those, receiving votes for all NBA teams. If we're going to win a championship, which is the goal for all of us, that's where we have to get. It doesn't matter. Greg Monroe, maybe he'll turn into that player. I don't know. I don't think he is. But it's all about Jabari and Giannis to me. And what we do around them. Not that it's irrelevant. You want to surround them with the best possible pieces, but you can surround them with the best pieces. If they don't pan out, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be back in rebuild mode in a couple of years anyways.
So I think that there's three things that you have to look at with signing Greg Monroe, right? One, Jake, one thing that I think you missed out on one of our needs that we had
left-handed.
Is actually rebounding, right?
Sure. I'm not trying to shortchange Greg Monroe.
Absolutely. But
he's a very, very good rebounder and very good post scorer.
Right. I'm saying the one thing I think he really adds is I think we can all say the Bucks kind of got beat up on the boards by bigger teams last year, right?
And unlike Zaza, he can leave his feet.
Right. So if he can come in and impact the game, rebounding the basketball on both ends of the floor, hopefully that'll be a big help. Because there were a lot of possessions where our defense would be great and we would stop them, but we would give up a rebound. So if he can clean that up, hopefully that will improve the team. So you look at defense, right? So that's the first thing that I would look at when he comes in here. And you can't just look at that with Greg Monroe, right? So the Bucks are going to be bringing in Greg Monroe to replace Zaza Pachulia. That's probably not going to be a downgrade. If it is a downgrade, it's probably not going to be that significant. The player that I think you really have to look at is Jabari Parker. And he wasn't a very good defender coming in. He was better than you expected. But will bringing him and Monroe in to the starting lineup make us a worse defensive team? Now, a lot of people that you talk to say no. Jabari Parker's long. Greg Monroe should be at least as good as Zaza Pachulia. We should stay a top 5 defense. Hopefully that theory holds true, because if that holds true, we're going to be pretty darn good again, just based on our defense alone. The second thing that you have to look at, I think, is spacing, like you said. In the terms of, the third thing, rebounding being the first, defense being the second, spacing being the third. So, you could say I'm looking at just all three aspects of the game and say, that's why. But even more so than just offense, you have to look at spacing, which is obviously huge in the NBA, like you mentioned. So you look at Chris Middleton, and you know what Chris Middleton is, right? Not to say that he still doesn't have upside as a player. Chris Middleton's going to be a 3-and-D guy. He's going to space the floor. He's going to play defense, and whatever else he gives you is a nice boost. Yeah, he can score off the dribble a little bit. Yeah, he can come off screens. Yeah, when
pretty
he has
good post player too.
Right, when he has a mismatch, he can take advantage of it. But for the most part, you want him spacing the floor at an elite level, and you want him playing defense. You look at Greg Monroe now, and we know what he does. He's a big bull of a player. He can score in the post, play out of the high post a little bit, and he should be a very good rebounder. Hopefully, like an 18 and 11 guy or something like that. So you look at those.
Great at finding cutters too.
Right, exactly. Very good passer. So
which MCW can cut. That plays
so
to MCW.
So
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
MCW, he doesn't have the jump. We're talking about spacing the jump shots. That's not MCW's game. Maybe we're all hopeful. We're hoping he's in the gym developing a jump shot right now. If you're listening to MCW, that's what we're hoping.
At the very least, one of Michael Carter-Williams, Giannis, or Jabari needs to be a good three-point shooter this year for a team to take another step.
Yep.
If 2 of the 3 can become good three-point shooters this year, that could be a huge step.
Yep. What I was getting at with the Middleton and Monroe thing is, what those 2 guys in your starting lineup, I think those are the guys what they have.
Sure.
Right? They're not going to change much. Middleton's going to kind of be what he is. Yeah, he still has upside. He can prove. Monroe's kind of going to be what he is. So I completely agree with you guys. If 2 of those 3 guys can get jump shots, I think the Bucks can be championship contenders. Now, is that going to happen this year? Probably not. Jabari Parker has to come back from injury. He has to get used to the league. He has to gain confidence in his knee, and he just has to develop because he's young. And the same thing holds true for Giannis. But if you can space the floor, yes, that's true. He has to be
joking, of course.
Yeah. If those guys can shoot the basketball, the Bucks are going to be really hard to stop offensively. And if the defense translates, like I said before, we should be a championship caliber team at some point down the road. Michael Carter-Williams, the guy, obviously it's a huge question mark because his jump shot is just broken beyond belief. So hopefully he can repair that and at least make it serviceable.
Yeah, well, and Giannis, I think we saw just from year 1 to year 2, his jump shot improved quite a bit. He's got a good form. I don't look at him and think he's broken.
He shot the ball as a rookie. I think it was 36% from three.
I forget what his mid-range percentage was, but
decent,
outside I think he was better.
He kind of struggled to start this year, and a lot of people speculated it was from the just growing pains. You add weight, he continued growing height-wise and length-wise. Your body has to adjust to that. But towards the end of the season, he really kicked it into high gear in his mid-range game.
Yep.
Yeah, you see that a lot. You'll see kids who are in high school are point guards. They're 6'2", 6'3". They're point guards. They get to college and they've ground up to 6'11". All of a sudden, they can't shoot even a free throw. And you say, how does that happen? They were nailing threes when they were younger, and then they just never adjust. He had some growing pains for sure, but he still had good form. And towards the end of the year, he seemed to be figuring it out, and he started hitting shots.
Confidence was there too.
Yeah, the confidence was there. You saw it. He got the ball. He didn't. If he was open, he'd take it. He missed it, whatever. And there's reports out there, and I've heard the word that Jason Kidd doesn't necessarily care if you take a shot and you miss it as long as you play good defense. And that probably, with a player like Giannis, it probably helps him. If you take that good shot and he's not getting benched like our buddy Scott Skiles necessarily would have done, maybe that'll help his confidence. We can hope.
Well, Luke, you talked about how if these guys develop jump shots, at some point they're going to be championship contenders. And you said maybe not this year. Well, talking about this year, where do you see the Bucks ending up in the thick of the Eastern Conference hunt? Personally, I think they may take a little bit of a step back. I think a lot of last year was you have the factor of being underestimated. Anytime you're not expected and you have this FU attitude, that's going to translate to more effort and more wins. If they do take a little bit of a step back, I'm okay with it because I think they're still a few pieces away, and I'd really, really love to see another young piece to go with that core that you can say, these are our core 3 young guys. Maybe MCW becomes that. I'm skeptical, but there's a chance. Monroe, he's a little bit older, but maybe being in this system, he really blossoms. Maybe it's Middleton, but deep down, I truly believe we need another young player, probably through the draft. But this year, I think they're probably going to be in a similar situation, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that. I mean, but what do you think?
So I think the Bucks going into this year, I'm trying to think of a more volatile team, and I can't. When you look at all the question marks right now, and obviously we're not to this season yet, but we're kind of thin in the front court. We're kind of thin on the wing. I don't know how Chris Copeland's going to turn out, but we're thin.
Great hair,
right? So
great lettuce.
So we're thin on the bench in the front. We are set at guard for all of eternity. We have pretty many options there. But with Jabari Parker coming back, you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get from him, right? He could be nothing, or he could be the prospect that we hope he is, and he could be great. Giannis could develop a jump shot and be a top 10 player in the league, or he could still kind of be what he was last year, which is a guy who flashes great potential but is
inconsistent.
Right, more so of a high-end role player than he is a quote-unquote star player.
Sure.
Greg Monroe could come in and mesh with the guys right away, or it could take 2 months for them to figure it out. Michael Carter-Williams could come in and start hitting his jump shot and be great, or he could be what he was last year and just not a very good player at all. And, Chris Middleton, you hope that after he gets his money, he keeps playing at the level that he played at or improves because he still is a young player. So I really think the Bucks could just maybe not shock the world because they're being predicted to be very good, but, maybe they could be a 3 seed or something like that. But I also think there's a chance that they could be the 8 seed or potentially even worse due to the lack of depth and the question mark that is Jabari Parker and these new players coming in that are going to need time to mesh together. Now, I don't think that they're going to miss the playoffs. Based on Jason Kidd's coaching last year, he was phenomenal, and I think that he's going to get the guys to go out and try hard every night. And as I've said a bunch of times before, effort is a huge part of the NBA regular season. So if you go out there and play hard every night, if Jason Kidd keeps getting them to play hard, they're basically a lock to be a playoff team. And I do think if everything clicks, they could be very, very good.
It seems like they have a very high ceiling and a very low floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anytime you're talking a team so young.
Yep.
Yeah, well, and not just a team so young. You've got the injury factor. I mean, we can't overlook it. We all want Jabari to come back. We want him to be healthy. We want him to be the player we thought he would be when we drafted him at number 2. We just don't know. We see videos and posts now and then. He looks like his leg's getting strong. He's playing a little hoops out in Vegas. He's jumping on the trampoline. That's all great. But that is not playing against NBA competition, and that's not him trusting his knee against contact, against going up against the bigs in the paint and everything he'll have to do in the NBA. So yeah, like Luke said, 3 seed. I think the absolute max they could be is the 2 seed. I don't see as long as LeBron is healthy and on Cleveland, they're the number 1 seed in my book. Beyond that, Atlanta, I don't buy into them. Chicago. Never know if Derrick Rose is going to be crippled like Jabari Parker or healthy.
Damn.
Right now.
There is no censorship here.
So you just don't know. They're an older team and they've got a new coach. So, and I just don't buy into Atlanta repeating it. Maybe they will because they had that formula we kind of talked about with great 3-point shooting and spacing the floor. They had that formula that seems to be working in the NBA right now. So I think the absolute max at 2 seed. I think realistic, probably right around that 6 seed where they were this year. I think that's realistic. I don't see much improvement from the teams that were below us last year. Maybe Boston sneaks in. New Jersey. They're all going to be there fighting for it. But again, they're kind of spinning the wheels. They're in that state we were in when we had Herb Cole as the owner, where they're just kind of spinning their wheels.
Treadmill team.
Exactly, treadmill. Not bad enough to get those lottery picks, but not good enough to actually do anything in the playoffs. I do think the Bucks winning 2 games against the Bulls last year. It's unfortunate Game 6 went the way it did, but
that didn't even happen.
Yeah, we won't even talk about it. But yeah, they just forfeited Game 6. The malfunctions on the court or whatever. But I think, despite how terrible that last game was, winning those 2 games should have done a lot for the young guys on this team. They've experienced playoff winning. They've seen what the crowd in Milwaukee can do and get behind the team. I think that should build their confidence, and hopefully, they can build on that this year and make something of it.
And you never know. Sometimes when you get overconfident, an ass whooping is the right medicine.
Yep.
So, on that note, I think we can wrap this up. Luke, we really, really appreciate you coming on the show. If you want to go to any games next year, you can sneak in with us. We'll put a disguise on you. A little fake mustache.
Yeah, we'll get a little fake mustache, some sunglasses or something, put a hat on you. No one will know better.
Awesome.
And,
thanks a lot, guys.
Remember, this is a band-free environment, so if you ever need to speak your voice, feel free to come on anytime. Next time we have a show, we're hoping for sometime probably just before the season starts, and our guest will most likely be B. Strasberg, a.k.a. Brent, from Real GM. So thanks for listening, guys, and we hope you listen again.
Thank you very much. We'll try to make this a more regular event now going forward.